The silence of that house had always been a weapon against me, a dense, heavy silence filled with invisible threats. The kind of silence that doesn't calm it suffocates, that doesn't welcome it watches, that doesn't protect it traps. But that night, on my last night there, the silence was different. It was as if it had changed sides. It was no longer the silence against me. It was me against everything that silence had represented for years. When I returned to the living room after leaving the ghost behind in the hallway, I noticed something had shifted. The wind had stopped. The wood no longer creaked. For the first time, the house felt quiet without threatening me. It was a new silence, a silence that seemed to respect my presence. I sat down on the living room floor near the door, not out of exhaustion, but out of need. I wanted to feel the cold floor, to touch the old texture of the tiles, to recognize where I was one last time before leaving. I leaned my head against the wall, the same wall where I had leaned my body so many times, running from shouting, from emotional blows, from the storm that always came from him. But that night, that wall didn't feel like an enemy. It felt like a farewell. I took a deep breath, and for the first time inside that house, my breath didn't come out shaky. It came out clean, full of me. I closed my eyes. The silence helped me, and within that embrace, things I had silenced for survival began to surface. The first time he humiliated me in front of someone, and I smiled to hide it. The first time he slammed the door hard enough to make my soul shrink. The first time I wanted to leave. The first time I went back. Each memory came like a thread pulled from beneath my skin, and it hurt, but it was a clean pain, a necessary one. That house had absorbed so many versions of me that now it seemed to return them one by one, as if saying, take everything that is yours. Don't leave any part of yourself here. And I was taking it. The silence was so deep, I could hear my own heartbeat. A steady, grounded sound full of life. It was strange. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard my heart beat like that inside that house. Fear had always made it race uneven, frantic, desperate. But that night, it beat like something that knew where it was going. I opened my eyes slowly. The shadows on the wall looked different, not threatening, symbolic, as if they were watching me with respect, almost with longing. I stood up calmly. I walked to the center of the living room, where I had so often stood folded inward, trying not to provoke conflict. And I stood there whole. That silence, once a command to shut up, now seemed to listen to everything I had to say, even without words. And I said it. Inside I said, I don't owe you anything anymore. The house didn't respond. It simply stayed there, quiet, accepting the truth. I walked to the window and opened the curtain one last time. The cold dawn air entered like an invitation, like a let's go. The street was almost empty, lit by only 2 tired streetlights, but it was beautiful. Not for what it showed, but for what it promised. Behind me, the silence expanded, filling every corner where fear had once lived. It was as if the entire house were offering me one last gift, peace. Not the peace that comforts, the peace that frees. I ran my hands over my own back, recognizing something I had forgotten for years. The weight was no longer mine. The silence of that final night wasn't about him. It wasn't about pain. It was about me, about the woman who learned to stay quiet to survive, about the woman who learned to speak inwardly because she couldn't speak outwardly, about the woman who, that night, was about to turn silence into strength. I walked to the door, placed my palm against the wood. It was warm, almost human. For a moment, the house seemed to hold my hand, not to stop me, but to say, this is how it was meant to be. The silence grew even larger, absolute, sacred, and within it, I felt a certainty I had never felt before. I was going to leave alive, and I was never coming back. I rested my forehead against the door, closed my eyes, and let the silence hold me for a few more seconds. Not as a threat, not as punishment, but as a rite of passage. That was my last night, and I was ready to let it go. If this story spoke to you, subscribe to the channel so you don't walk this journey alone. And make sure to *** watch the next video in the next section or the next series. ***, where the door finally opens and a new life begins beyond it.